there's a lot of unreported video and unconfirmed news coming out of Syria over the last 48, 72 hours. Can you walk us through what we do know about what transpired? And just in the last few moments, we did hear from al-Shara, who himself has said he demands a full investigation into this as well.
Indeed. The context is very difficult, so it's difficult to know the full picture. But what we know before even this started, that it has been building up. What we had is an army and security forces for the previous regime that suddenly been dissolved. So we knew that there were hundreds of thousands of people who were part of the old regime, who are trained, who are armed, who are linked with each other. Many, but not all of them, are Alawite. Many went to the coast. Feel completely excluded out of the new regime, feel very threatened, lost their resources, their power, and they were ready to hit back. And these people should have been processed through a process of either transitional justice or DDR or integrated in some form of security forces, but should not have been let free. These are all the same mistakes that have been committed after the Iraq invasion, the dissolving the army, the Baathification, creating an excluded minority that feel completely powerless. And now they're hitting back. So what they did is that they started with an ambush against the new security forces. I wouldn't say, as the report said, against the rebels who liberated Syria, because now we have a new formed state. And these guys who've been killed, they are young members of the security forces. They just joined, just been trained. They are not member of the terrorist organization. And they've been ambushed, and that kind of started a backlash and a series of massacres. Now, several groups joined from across the country. Some of them are part of the very newly formed Syrian army, which is still different brigades. The new president is trying to bring them together, but there's so many divisions between them, so many different drivers, and they're not all really under the control of the president. Some of these brigades, particularly the one called the Lamshat, who were active in North Syria, used to be supported by Turkey, they committed horrific crimes. Also, previous members of HTS, who were the international jihadists from Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, all the stands, they also committed absolutely horrific crimes. And it's still ongoing. It's still happening until now. There are still forces going from one village to the other, killing civilians. And what we know is that at least 240 from security forces have been killed and more than 1,000 civilians at least.
That's what I was going to ask you, and thank you. You really helped explain what's transpired. But to the fact that you say this is still ongoing, it is alarming, especially since you have al-Shara, who's making public statements now, calling for calm, calling for investigations, even, quote, for those closest to us, vowing to punish anyone in this violence. So does that just reinforce the point you made that he likely does not have control of all of these fighting forces?
Yeah, and it's very difficult to have control so quickly. We're coming from a background of a very, very fragmented country where the conflict is still there. The conflict is not over. I was in Syria, I walked around, you feel the divisions are still there. Different brigades have different drives, different ideology. It's not going to be easy to integrate them. No one can do this in Syria. My belief is that we really need a multilateral, neutral presence to help, like, UN mission who can help integrate these forces, do DDR process, mediate when mediation is needed, protect when protection is needed. I don't think we can leave it to Syrians on their own right now. We don't want, one country to come and intervene, but we want a more neutral presence that everyone can feel safe around and who can assist the new authority to produce something more inclusive. Because the reality is, okay, we're speaking about those ex-regime criminals, but in the background, the Alawite community is tired. They don't want this. I spoke to so many Alawites in Syria. You could see it. They don't want this. And we have to remember, it's them who decided not to support the regime when it was collapsing. The regime collapsed because the loyalist community did not fight for him. They're done with it, and they are resisting this. They're resisting another episode of violence. So they need to feel secure. They need to feel safe. And then they become partner in building a new country. But right now, they don't see themselves in the new authorities. All the minorities in Syria, you can see it everywhere. They don't feel the new system is inclusive enough. It doesn't mean they want to overthrow the regime. No one wants to talk about overthrowing the regime now in Syria. It will be a nightmare. No one wants such a huge-scale operation. They want to see a more inclusive regime, more inclusive system of governance. They want to be represented. They don't want a sectarian army. A sectarian army have been formed, sectarian by design, led by officials who are not even Syrians. So they do feel threatened, and we have to understand this. And we can see now the results of them not being secure enough.
Where does this leave Western countries, from Europe to the United States, who obviously had sanctioned the Assad regime heavily and over the course of the last few weeks had been really in the process of lifting some of those sanctions, been meeting with al-Shara and some of his top deputies as well? I mean, the United States came out and said that we condemn the Syrian massacres and that the U.S., quote, stands with the minorities. How at risk is the lifting now of these sanctions, which al-Shara desperately needs, as you've noted?
Absolutely. I mean, one reason we have all of this is that the economy is in complete ruin, and anyone can come and recruit young men for a new episode of violence. I mean, many in the Al-Wahid community have been misled into this by some ex-generals who had some money and who seem to have some links also with the regional powers like Iran. So we do need the sanctions to be lifted. But together with that, we need other steps to ensure that the governance is going to be inclusive, that we're not going to have a corrupt government, that the economy is going to work for the people. So not just lift sanctions full stop. Keep watching, see how that lifting is changing the new system. Use every leverage you have to ensure the emergence of more democratic, inclusive Syria. Everyone's forgetting democracy. No one wants to talk about democracy. But I think it's democracy that will protect people. It will make the minorities feel safe. It will make them feel represented. They will make sure that then no one's going to come to power and stay for another 50 years with no chance of sharing power at all. So I don't support a full boycott. I think we should work to lift the sanctions, but as I said, ensure that this is going to work for the people, not for a new elite who are going to control the resources of the state and ignore everyone. All these young men spread around the country, they should be involved in development projects. They should be building Syria right now. They should not be killing each other. And without the funds flowing, without the economy that functions in the light and the shadow, as it is the case right now, because of the sanctions, we're not going to have such country that involves its people in a more positive project.